واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي. فبعزتك استجب لدعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غناء. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاؤه البقاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم. صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهل. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وهو أصدق الصادقين وقوله الحق. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات الله محمد وآل محمد. Respected scholars, elders of the community, my brothers and sisters in Islam, Salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. We have been talking about our journey towards the proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in so doing we have emphasized that this is not a physical journey that we talk about. The journey that we are talking about is the journey that is spiritual in nature, a journey where proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means the lifting and the piercing of the hijab, the veils that are between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we say that this is an important aspect of a person's human life as he tries in his life to attain the proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in so doing he starts to manifest the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within himself. And we said that in this journey there are certain obstacles that may come in our way, and it is important that we recognize what those obstacles are and we try our best to remove those obstacles, or at least to try and manage those obstacles in the best way that we possibly can, so that it does not hamper our progress and our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about the fact that the ulama of akhlaq have identified 4 major obstacles. We have discussed 3 of them in detail over the last 2 or 3 lectures, and we want to focus on the 4th one today. The obstacles that the ulama of urafa and akhlaq identify are the obstacles that was number 1 we discussed was shaitan, and we talked about the personal internal shaitan that each one of us has. We talked yesterday also in detail about the environment and the importance of our mindset. But we have left the final one, which is the importance of the obstacle, which is our own nafs, which is our own inner self. If you look at the literature from the urafa, there is a lot of people start to talk about nafs and heart of an individual interchangeably. In the minds of the urafa, it is actually quite separate and distinct. But for the purposes of our conversation today and for the purpose of this lecture, I will use those 2 terms interchangeably to make it easy for us. So the 4th obstacle we're going to talk about is the nafs, right, is the inner self of the person or the heart of the person. It's very interesting because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is an ayah in the Quran, it's an amazing verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He mentions the Quran, the revelation of the Quran. He says this revelation of the Quran, we have revealed this Quran and it is a healing and a source of mercy for you. A healing and a source of mercy for you. وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا, he says. However, he said it is a source of mercy, a source of healing for who? For the believers. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this same Quran, which is a source of healing and a source of mercy for believers, this same Quran is nothing but it causes more loss to those people who are oppressors. Now when the Quran uses the word oppressors, zalimina, don't think about the people who are oppressing other people only. You think that, but it also applies to that as well. It also applies to that if you are oppressing your wives, or in the West, it is your wives who maybe are oppressing you, right? Or if it is you are, and sometimes what happens, is that, you are oppressing other members of your family. And there is a problem sometimes. We don't realize that we are oppressing each other in our family. The way we talk to others, we oppress, in our speech, in our behavior, in many different things. One big area is respect of parents, right? How we actually oppress our parents by disrespecting the parents, as an example. So there are many aspects to this oppression, but when the Quran talks about oppression, it is not just oppression that is apparent that you are all familiar with, but the Quran also talks about oppressing your own nafs. Those people who oppress their own nafs, where we have spiritual illnesses inside our hearts, that is only going to be nothing. If you are one of those people, the Quran will not have an effect on you, the Quran says. In fact, not only will it not have an effect on you, it will cause you more loss. It's the ayat of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the same Quran which can be a healing and a source of mercy for the believer, for the person who is oppressing his own self and others, it is a source of causing even more loss. And you have to think about this, because it's an amazing verse. How can the Quran cause loss for somebody, khasara for somebody? Isn't it a source of nur? Isn't it a source of rahmah? This is what we think, right? How can this happen? In order to understand this, we have to dwell in a little bit of philosophy. Now I know it's tough, man, to do philosophy, especially in Muharram. But just be with me. I promise you, it won't be more than 5-10 minutes. But it's going to be very important for you to understand what I'm trying to say when the Quran is saying that for the oppressors it is a source of loss. Nothing but a source of loss. You see, there is a difference between the content of something and the container that holds the content. Yeah? If something has two opposite effects on two different things, then the conclusion you have to draw from that is that the effect is not coming from the source, but the effect is coming from the property of the recipient of the source. Have I lost you? Okay. Let me give you some examples. If you have a block of wax, yeah? and if you have a block of wood, and you put both of them under the sun, what will happen? The block of wax will melt, yeah? But the block of wood will become harder. Will it not? This is physics, man. It's not philosophy. This is physics. Yeah? Right? So I'm going to try and give it to you in scientific terms, right? So you have a block of wax and a block of wood under the burning sun. The sun's rays are the same. You have them side by side. The wax will melt. The wood will become harder. So what is the source? What is the problem? The effect that you see in front of you is not as a result of the source, is it? It's not the result of the sun. The effect that is different is because those two recipients of that rays of sun have different properties. Their properties are different. One melts, the other one gets hard. The rays are the same. They are hitting both of them the same, at the same intensity, at the same time. But the effect is different. Does that make it clear? Yeah. So in the hadith, the heart is referred to as the container. The nafs of a person is referred to as the container. The Quran is a source. It depends on how good your container is. That will determine what effect the Quran will have on you. Am I making myself clear? It's really important you understand this. If you don't understand this, I'll apologize to the Muki and then he can beat me up later and I'll take 5 extra minutes. But it's really important you understand this. So am I making myself clear? Okay. So this is what it is. The source of, you take any blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is a blessing of Allah, is it not? You take any grace of Allah, any benevolence of Allah, any blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That blessing is pouring down on you 24/7. It's the same. It hasn't changed. It depends on the heart of the believer as to how much you can contain of that blessing. Yeah? On the night of Laylatul Qadr, the Quran is revealed, right? The angels come down, right? The angels come down with blessings on that night of Laylatul Qadr, do they not? It depends on your heart on that night of Laylatul Qadr as to how much you are able to gain of that Quran on that night. It is only the heart of the Imam that is able to take the entire Quran in its entirety into his heart because he has the capacity. We take whatever little that we can take. Some of us don't take anything because we are sleeping. Right? So this is very important to understand that the Quran, it's like rain, right? When rain falls, if you have a container, let us say you have a septic tank or a tank that's rusty and you've got rain falling on it. And there is, it's a septic tank, it's dirty, it's septic. If the rain falls inside that tank, what will happen to the water? The water will become dirty, right? The water will become poisonous because it's a septic tank. The tank is dirty. Is it the fault of the water? No, it's not. The rainfall is pure in how it comes. It is the container that determines what happens to that rainfall. Right? So the Quran is the light, is the means. It's the content. When it hits the heart of a believer, you will see rahmah, and you will see guidance, and you will see beauty, and you will see wisdom, and you will see proximity to God. But that same Quran, when it hits the heart of an oppressor, a person who has oppressed himself, then that same Quran will cause nothing but khasara, nothing but loss. So do not think that knowledge in itself will guide a person. See, this is why we sometimes we don't understand. We say, Bana, so many lectures we give. The community is baffled. The leadership of the community is baffled. The leadership of the community is saying, Mana, so many lectures, we do youth workshops and all of those things. Every day, Muharram, Shahru Ramadan, we bring the best speakers, from outside and they come. Why is there no change in our community? Why are the youth still the same? What is the problem? The problem is not with the source. The problem is with the container. We have not nurtured and cultivated the nafs. We have not made the nafs ready to be able to accept that reality that is being presented to them. That is why it is not showing an effect. This is why if you have a pure and clean heart, in the Quran it is called qalb salim, right? And Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi has a whole book on qalb salim. This is why when you have a pure heart, a little knowledge, just a little knowledge, will have a huge effect on that person. But if you have a heart that is impure, that is full of spiritual illnesses, when the heart is full of spiritual illnesses, then even if you are somebody who has studied years in Najaf and Qum, it won't have an effect on you. It's not about the source, it's about the recipient of the source. So this is where we understand the Holy Prophet's role. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته. This has been our theme, right? ويزكيهم. One of his major responsibilities is to help you to purify yourself, so that that heart becomes pure. And if that heart becomes pure, then it will start to acquire those qualities that is meant to acquire. If the heart is diseased with spiritual illnesses, then it does not matter what you do. It will, in fact, in some cases, as the Quran says, it will cause even more loss. We need to understand, how do we purify this heart? How do we purify this heart? You may feel, for example, that you have people who recite Salatul Layl regularly, without fail. Salatul Layl, Ibadat, worship, all of these things. And you feel, why is it not having an effect on them? It is because the heart is not clean. So the question then is, how do we clean this heart? How do we purify this heart so that it is able to receive from that source? The source being the Holy Quran, the blessings of Allah, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, if you want to know a person who is a true believer, this is the sixth Imam, if you want to know a person who is a true believer, he says, do not look at how that person prolongs his ruku and how he prolongs his sujud. That is not the sign of a true believer. This is sixth Imam is saying. He's saying that don't be deceived by this, because he says this just may be a habit of that person which he has developed over a long time. Don't be deceived by it. Imam alayhi salam says that if you truly want to know that who is a true believer, then test him with two things. See how honest they are and see how trustworthy they are. If you find them honest and trustworthy, then know that he's a believer. See how Imam is defining a true believer. He's saying that, if they are just prolonging their ruku and sujood, it just may be a habit for them. And it's like that with some people. There are some people, who will do certain worships, and if they don't do that worship, right? They feel really uneasy about it because it has become a habit for them. But you see, every worship, if you look at every worship, it has an effect on your heart. The essence of that worship is that it needs to spiritually uplift you. The effect of that worship is that it needs to create a moral and ethical framework in your nafs. That is the key. Look at salat, right? We talked about salat just now, so look at salat. What does Allah say about salat, right? Utlu ma uhiya ilayka min al-kitabi wa aqim as-salat. Inna as-salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. What is the purpose of salat? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, establish regular prayer, for prayer restrains you from shameful and unjust acts. That's what prayer does. If you ever want to know, has my prayer been accepted? I have recited these salats. Has my salat been accepted? Know that if you are now staying away from unjust and shameful acts, then be confident that Allah has accepted your salat. If you are just doing the gulanti, and that's it, right, and nothing has changed, then there's work to do. There is work to do. The purification of nafs is the main way for us to get the blessings of Allah in the way that we need to understand what is the truth. And as long as our hearts and our nafs, as long as our nafs is full of these spiritual illnesses, then we are mad, we are crazy, even though we may appear to be sane. This is the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet says, so there was a man who was, a person who was, who had a mental illness. And when the Holy Prophet was walking, he looked at this man and he asked his companion, he said, who is this person? And the companion says, oh, he's just a madman. And the Holy Prophet said to them, don't call him a madman. Just say that he is afflicted with an illness. A madman is that person whose attachment to this world is such that his heart is full of spiritual illnesses. That's who a madman is. What do we call a madman in Urdu? Pagal, right? Yeah? So pagal in Urdu, for the youngsters, you call somebody who's crazy, you call him pagal. Sawa? Yeah. Right. Pagal, right? So pagal has a meaning, right? The person who is pagal from an Islamic context has a meaning because that person, the pagal, is full of spiritual illnesses because the P stands for pride. The A stands for anger. The G stands for greed. The other A stands for attachment to this materialistic world. And the L stands for lust. That is a person who is pagal. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. Umependa hiyo, eh? Until and unless we have developed this basic level of ethical and morality, spiritual ethics and spiritual morality within ourselves, by eliminating these diseases of our nafs, we will not be able to progress. We will not be able to, even the worships that we carry out will not have an effect. Wallah, I'm telling you, it will not have an effect. Because look at what the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, right? When he was asked, what is the purpose for which you have come to this world? He says, Inni bu'istu li'utammima makarimul akhlaq. He says, my purpose for coming in this world is to perfect your ethical and moral framework. That's it. Not to create an ethical and moral framework. to perfect your ethical and moral framework. What does that mean? It means that every nafs, every heart has the capacity to develop an ethical and moral framework. All it needs is to be nurtured. And that's where the process of purification comes. And this is why there was so much opposition to the Holy Prophet. The reason there was so much opposition to the Holy Prophet when he came was because of the fact that he did not come to do anything else. He came to transform the nafs of the people. That's tough, man. It's tough. It's tough to do. It's having this, having a paradigm shift is even easier. But to transform the inner being of somebody is not easy to do. And that's what the Prophet came to do here. And you see, right? You see from the Quran, people of his time, they were expecting a superhuman. They were expecting, somebody like Superman, is going to go around the earth and then he's going to make time go back. They were expecting a superhuman performing miracles. They had the concept of Jesus in their mind. Jesus, who's gonna, Nabi Isa, alayhi salam, who performed certain miracles. They were looking for somebody who was gonna perform certain miracles. So when they did not see that initially of the Prophet, they became, like they said, who is this person? How can he be a prophet? See, think about it. Just think about it for a minute. The Holy Prophet did not announce his Risala until he was the age of 40. Am I right? Yeah. We believe, of course, that he was a prophet from the beginning, but he did not make an official announcement until he was 40. Why? Why? I mean, you can tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when he came to Jesus, Nabi Isa, he spoke when he was in the cradle. Right? Ana Abdullah atani al-kitaba wa ja'alani an-nabiyya. Right? He says, I am the servant of God. I have been sent down with a book. And I am the prophet, right? I am a prophet and I've been sent down with the book. So if Isa could talk in a cradle, why not the prophet? It's a question that you have to ask. But the mission of the prophet, because he's the seal of the prophets, so his mission is sublime. It's the highest level. He has to complete all the incomplete missions that were before him. He had to complete it. So for 40 years, he had to show people that you won't accept the message until you cultivate your inner selves. That is why he showed his akhlaq for 40 years. That is why they called him Sadiq. They call him As-Sadiq and Al-Amin, the truthful one and the trustworthy one. Allah wanted to show us that, look, before you start worship and all of that, you need to be like him. Create a level of Islamic ethics and morality in your heart. Then you can start to accept the religion. This is the example of the Prophet. They were expecting a superhuman. So what did they do? They tried to bribe him. So they tried to bribe him. They offered him wealth. They offered him women. But when they found out that his message was far too sublime and far too spiritual to have an effect on him, then they started to test him. Look at their thinking. Look at the thinking that they have. Then they started to test him and asked him to perform ridiculous actions. Because they were looking for miracles. So they say to the Holy Prophet, and this is the Quran, right? Chapter 17, ayat 90 onwards, right? In the Quran, then they say to the Holy Prophet, وَقَالُوا لَن نُؤْمِنَ لَكَ حَتَّى تَفْجُرَ لَنَا مِنَ الْأَرْضِ يَنْبُوءً. They say to the Prophet that we will not believe you that you are a prophet unless you cause a fountain to gush forth from the earth. Then we will believe that you are a prophet. And then they said, okay, if you can't do that, أَوْ تَكُونَ لَكَ جَنَّةً مِّن نَخِيلٍ وَعِنَبٍ فَتُفَجِّرَ الْأَنْهَارَ جِلَالَهَا تَفْجِيرًا. They said, if you can't do that, then you should have a garden made up of palm trees and grape trees in the middle of the desert. That's a neat trick, man. You know, in the middle of a desert. And in not only the garden, then there should be rivers that should be flowing and gushing out. If you do that, then we will believe you're a prophet. And then they said, okay, no problem. If you can't do that, أو تسقط السماء كما زعمت علينا كسفا أو تأتي بالله والملائكة قبيلا. They said, okay, if you cannot do that, you should cause the heaven to come down to us. You should cause Jannah, the heaven, to come down to us in pieces. And then they said, and you should bring Allah to us and the angels to us so that we can talk to them face to face. Then we will believe you are a prophet. And they said, okay, if you can't do that, then أو يكون لك بيت من الزخرف أو ترفع في السماء ولن تؤمن لرقيك حتى تنزل علينا كتابا تقرؤه. Subhanallah. Then they said to the Prophet, if you can't do that, then you should have a house of gold. We have to see a house of gold. And if you can't have that, then you should ascend into the heaven. And we want you to see you, to ascend into the heaven. And he said, when you go into the heavens, then you should send down a book to us from the heavens. And it should be in Arabic, because we need to read it. And if you do that, then we will believe that you're a prophet. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reply to this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Holy Prophet, O Holy Prophet, tell them, قل سبحان ربي هل كنت إلا بشرا رسولا. He says, oh, the Holy Prophet, tell these people that, you know, that all of these things that you have asked me to do, tell them, glory be to my Lord. I am just a messenger who has come to you with a message. And I have come to you in a human form. It's not that I cannot perform miracles, because he did perform miracles, right? It's not that I cannot perform miracles, but he says you have not understood the purpose of my coming. My purpose of coming here is to nurture your nafs, is to nurture your hearts, is to purify your hearts, is to create morality and ethics in your heart, so that if I do that, then if you want, you will be able to perform these miracles. This is the purpose of the Prophet. وَمَا أَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا. Allahu Akbar. Surah Yasin we recite sometimes, Wallahi we don't understand, bana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have not sent him to recite poetry, nor is it appropriate for him to recite poetry. I have sent him to admonish you. I have sent him with a plain Quran, a manifest Quran. But I have sent him so that he may warn you. Warn who? Warn you, those of you who are alive. لِيُنْزِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا. Those of you, warn those of you who are alive. It means there are people who are physically alive, but spiritually they are dead. The warning is for those who are alive. Those who have spiritual illnesses in their heart. Don't forget pagal, right? If there's anything you'll to get out of this, I know you'll get out pagal from it, right? So if you have those spiritual illnesses in your heart, then you are not alive. You are dead, because even the Quran doesn't have an effect on you. This is what the Holy Prophet says. So they finally come to him and said, okay, we are ready to give you everything. We will give you everything. They come to him and they say, okay, we will give you all the gold, and we'll give you all the silver, we'll give you all the property you want, We will even give you the kingdom. We will make you the head of the community, they say to the Prophet. And they say, we will even give you the most beautiful woman in Arabia. Everything we'll give you. We've got an even better deal for you, they say. You can even practice your own religion. Allahu Akbar. So they are bribing the Prophet now. We'll give you everything. Your gold, property, women, we'll make you the head, power, position, everything we are going to give you. But they said, even your own religion you can practice. But only one condition we have. Just one small thing. And the Prophet said, what is it? He said, you see, what we want to do, one day we will worship your God. And then the next day we will worship our own idols. Just allow us to do that. One day we will worship your God, and then the next day we will worship our own idols. They were not ready to even give away their own values. Their idols they were not prepared to give away. We are like that as well. We think this is, the time of Jahiliyyah. We are in the same situation. Because this is what we tell Allah. Right? One day we will worship you. Shahru Ramadan, whole Quran I will recite. Every Daroj Exiparo. Right? Laylatul Qadr I will stay awake. Ramadan is good. Muharram 12 days, I have to come, 12 days. But the other days then after Muharram and Shahru Ramadan, then I have my own issues. I have to worship my own God. You see, our gods are the same. They are the same idols. Our idol is our wealth. Our idols is whatever it is, right? We have our own idols that we want to worship. And we make the same deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will worship you. There is a time we will worship you. And then there is a time that, we're out of here, man. We got other things to do. We're in the same way. Once there was a person, who was selling, he was selling a camel. And he sold a camel to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was him and the Holy Prophet. He's selling a camel. The Holy Prophet wanted to buy the camel. So they made a deal. And he said, okay, this is how much the camel costs. And the Holy Prophet gave him the money. So once the Holy Prophet gave him the money, the Holy Prophet said to him, okay, now can I have my camel? So he said, what camel? There's no camel, man. There's nothing doing. I don't remember no camel. So Holy Prophet said to him, bro, I just gave you the money for the camel. Right? So I just gave you the money for the camel. I bought it. We made a deal. Here, I gave you the money. And now you're saying, what camel? He said, I know nothing, man. There's no camel. So there was a few companions of the Holy Prophet who were sitting down. So the Holy Prophet said to him, let's ask them to resolve this issue. So they went to the companions. And the Holy Prophet said to the companions, look, this man, I bought a camel from him. And I gave him the money. And now he's refusing to give me the camel. And the guy said, I don't know what camel he's talking about. And so the companion said to the Holy Prophet, Prophet, do you have any witnesses? So the Prophet said, but I don't have any witnesses because it was just me and him. There was nobody there. It was just a transaction that happened between me and him. So I don't have any witnesses. Oh, it's a problem then, Bana. It's a problem. Just at that time, Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he was walking past. And the Holy Prophet said, let's ask him. So the man says, okay, let's ask him. So the Prophet said the story that, I bought this camel, I gave him the money, now he's not giving me the money. And so the man said, yeah, I don't know anything about no camel. So what's your decision? The Amirul Mu'mineen, without blinking an eye, he says the camel belongs to the Prophet. So this man said, well, wait, man. But how can you say the camel belongs to the Prophet? There is no witness. There is no nothing. and you're just saying, without even thinking, you said the camel belongs to the Prophet. Amirul Mu'mineen looked at this person and he said, look, who you are talking to here is the Prophet of Islam. He is our Prophet. He told us to say, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. We believed him. He told us there is Qiyamah. We believed him. He gave us all the realities. We believed him. You are talking about a camel. Papa. Is a problem here. He says the camel belongs to him. There is a Hindu shair, by the name of Mathur. His name is Mathur. He's a Hindu shair. He says, Jam pe jam piye, phir bhi Musalman rahe. Jam pe jam piye, phir bhi Musalman rahe. Dukh imamon ko diye, phir bhi Musalman rahe. Hai yahi deen, तो इस दीन पे तौबा माथुर शक पैगंबर पे किए फिर भी मुसलमान रहे. This is the importance, my friends. Understand when you cultivate the nafs, the power that the nafs has. And you see this, it is so rampant in the Quran. Look at the example that you see classically in the story between Moses, Nabi Musa, and the magicians. Right? Look at the view of the magicians and compare that with the view of the Pharaoh. What happens? Hazrat Musa alayhi salam throws his staff, right? It becomes a serpent. It becomes a snake. And what does that snake do? It swallows the snake of the false snakes of all the magicians, right? The illusions of all the magicians. As soon as that happens, the truth comes in front of the magicians. They have a level of morality and ethics in their heart. As soon as that truth comes, immediately the Quran says, فَأُلْقِيَ سَحَرَةُ السَّاجِدِينَ. Immediately they fling themselves into sajda. They say, Kalu amanna bi Rabbil Alameen. We believe in the Lord of the worlds. What is Pharaoh doing? Pharaoh, the same reality is in front of Pharaoh. But Pharaoh does not accept it. He cannot accept it. Why can he not accept it? Because his nafs and his heart is full of the spiritual illnesses. Pagal. Full of spiritual illnesses in his heart, right? And so what does he say to those magicians? He says to the magicians, I will cut off your hands and your feet from opposite sides. But once they have accepted the reality, the response of the magicians is, Kalu la zaira inna ila rabbana munqalibun. They say to the Pharaoh, we don't care what you do to us. We have now accepted the truth. It doesn't matter. We are not afraid. We shall return to our Lord. Because the access that you have is only in this world. But we have seen the truth. This is what happens when you have purified that nafs of those spiritual illnesses. Right? Look at the relationship of morality and faith is intertwined in the Pharaoh. He is not able to accept the truth because of his own defects in morality and ethics. He sees the same thing in front of him, but he cannot accept it. And so if we want to do that, we want to really purify, we want to really go into this journey, we have to start at the most basic of levels, which is to purify our nafs, which is really to get rid of those spiritual illnesses in our hearts. And we develop a positive moral and ethical framework. And you see this, this is the same story that you see. Think about this, right? Think about, our friend Iblis, right? We talked about him, a couple of days ago. So think about Iblis, right? He's been worshipping God for thousands of years. Thousands of years, right? To the extent that worship of his brought him to the level of the angels. Yeah, this is Iblis. There is a story. Say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When the Prophet had returned from Mi'raj, he met somebody, the person came to him and he said to him, so you went into the heavens? He said, yes, I went into the heavens. And he said, you went into all the different levels? And he said, yes, I went into the level. He says, there is a level there, that there is a very large throne there. And he said, yes. He said, did you see that throne? And the Prophet said, yes, I saw the throne. And he said that, I used to sit on that throne. This is Shaitan. This was Iblis talking to the Prophet. He said, I used to sit on the throne. And he said, what used to happen, he said, I used to have a tasbih in my hand. Now, there's a lot of symbolic and irfani meanings to this, but we won't go into that. And he said, I used to have a tasbih in my hand. And when the tasbih would fall on the ground, the angels would rush to see who could get that tasbih and give it to me first. This is the level of Shaitan, right? So look at the Shaitan, right? What does he do? He refuses to prostrate Adam. He refuses to prostrate Adam. So we have to understand a very important aspect of morality and ethics here. You see, we have to understand how sometimes knowledge is not enough. Sometimes theology is not enough, because we have obstacles of morality and ethics in our nafs that do not allow us to see the realities and accept the truth. Because if you look at the conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Iblis, Iblis is at the peak of theological knowledge. When he addresses God, he addresses him as Rabb. He does not address him just as, any other name of God. He addresses him as Rabb. This is not an ordinary name. When Iblis says Rabb, it means you are not just Allah. You have not just created me. You are my sustainer. You sustain me. He calls him as Rabb. And then so he believes in Tawheed. He believes in the oneness of God. He also believes in the Day of Judgment. How does he believe in the Day of Judgment? Because when Allah kicks him out, we mentioned this, right? He says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me respite until the Day of Judgment. It shows that he believes in the Day of Judgment, does he not? Otherwise he would not have said, give me respite until the Day of Judgment. He also believes in prophethood, because he says to Allah that if you give me respite until the Day of Judgment, I will sit on your straight path and I will deviate all the believers, but I do not have access to the mukhlisin of your believers. There are some special people, even I don't have access to them. Other than them, I will deviate everybody else. He believes in Nabuwah. You see, actually his understanding of Nabuwah is even better than ours. We are still doubting, are the prophets infallible or not infallible? The Shaitan has already told Allah, I know I have no access to them, boss. I have no access to them. We know that that means they are infallible. I got no access to them. We are still doubting, are they infallible or not infallible? So he believes in Tawheed. He believes in Qiyamah. He believes in Nabuwah. So theologically, he's pretty good. He's pretty good theologically. Then why is it that he is not prostrating to Adam? Ever thought of that? The reason he's not prostrating to Adam is because he has pride in his heart. His nafs is full of pride. Because of that pride, he is not able to prostrate to Adam. قَالَ يَا إِبْلِيسِ Allahu Akbar. Allah says in the Holy Quran, قَالَ يَا إِبْلِيسِ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيْهِ. O Iblis, what is it that stopped you to prostrate to that Adam that I created? What stopped you? Astakbarta am kunta min al-alin. Are you proud, or do you think you are one of those exalted ones? Allahu Akbar. I said a very important statement around wilaya. You didn't even pay attention, man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Iblis, there are two reasons why you did not prostrate to Adam. Astakbarta, either you are proud, am kunta min al-alin, or you think you are one of those exalted ones. Now I can ask Allah, wait, man. Wait. What are you talking about? What exalted ones? So you have just created Adam, Bapa. Which exalted ones are you talking about? The ulama tell us that this is a hint to the wilaya of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Because it means that there was some exalted one who were present there. And they were so exalted that everybody had to bow in front of Adam, but they did not have to bow. Otherwise, Allah would not have said, are you proud? Or do you think you are one of these exalted ones? You're not these exalted ones, so you got to be proud. So this is the nafsi, that spiritual illness in the nafs, in the heart of shaitan, that makes him into who he is. And that is the illness of pride. See, if you look at the Quran, you will see in the Quran there are certain themes that go with each other. Right? And Allah wants to make a point. Whenever Allah talks about salat, He also talks about zakat. Right? Aqimus salat wa atuz zakat. So He talks about salat, which is for him, but he combines it with a akhlaqi thing, with a moral and ethical behavior on how you should help others who are less fortunate than you. Whenever he talks about taqwa, he combines it with sila rahmi. Whenever he talks about taqwa, he combines it with being good to your kin, your blood relations. And whenever he talks about his own worship, he combines it with obedience to parents. Every point he is letting you know, you want me, you also have to consider my creation. You want to do this, build your ethical and moral framework. Do your ethical and moral framework. Get rid of your spiritual illnesses, and then see how I become your teacher. See how I infuse light into your heart. See how I make you into that spiritual person that is able to pierce those veils so that you can get proximity to none other than me. This is what you see in Karbala. You see the beings in Karbala who are fully connected with their nafs. They have no spiritual illnesses in their heart. Because they have no spiritual illnesses in their heart, they have heard the call of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. They are not only have they heard it, they have understood it. Not only they have understood it, they have acted upon it. Not only they have acted upon it, they are ready to give their lives for it. This is the beauty. And we talk about that young man today. The young man who was the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Qasim, look at the cleanliness of his heart. Look at the sincerity of this young youth of Karbala. This young youth, he hears that the Imam has a list in which there is the names of people who would be martyred on the day of Ashura. Look at how pure his heart is, without any type of defect or blemishes. He comes to the holy Imam and he says, "Oh my uncle, I want you to tell me, is my name written on that list?" And Imam alayhi salam sits down with Hazrat Qasim and he says to Qasim, "Oh Qasim, tell me, how do you find death? How do you find death?" And Qasim responds, he says to his Imam, "Oh my uncle, if we are on the truth, then death to me is sweeter than honey. Death to me is sweeter than honey if we are on the truth." And Imam bows his head and tears flow out of the cheeks of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. In that time, on the day of Ashura, Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam, he comes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and he comes to Imam Hussein, he asks Imam Hussein, I would like to now go and fight in the battle of Ashura. Imam says to him that I cannot give you permission, Qasim, for you are the spitting image of my brother Hassan. Whenever I remember my brother Hassan, I always used to see your face, Qasim. How can I let you go into the fields of Karbala? Hazrat Qasim comes to his mother, Farwa, who was weak of eyesight, and he says to her that I went to my uncle, but my mom, she is not giving me permission to go into the fields of Karbala. Farwa comes to Fizza, and she says to Fizza, oh Fizza, ask Imam Hussein, ask Abu Abdullah al-Hussein to come near my tent. Imam alayhi salam comes near the tent of Farwa. And Farwa says to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, oh Abu Abdullah, is it my fault that I am a widow? Is it my fault that I am a widow? For if today my husband would have been alive, even you would have needed permission for my husband. Why are you not giving Qasim permission? Imam starts to cry. Just at that time, Qasim remembers that he has a small amulet. He has a small amulet, and he remembers that his father had given this to him and said to him, oh Qasim, when you have a time, when you are in the most difficulty, open this thing up and read what is inside it. Qasim opens the amulet. He sees that there is a letter there for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He gives the letter for Imam al-Hussein. When Imam al-Hussein looks at that letter, he immediately has remembrance of his brother Imam Hassan. He starts to cry. He kisses the letter. Imam opens the letter, and the letter says, oh Abu Abdullah, I want you to give my son Qasim the permission to go and sacrifice himself on my behalf. Azadaro, Imam gives permission to Qasim. The historians write that Imam himself dressed Qasim in white as if he was putting a coffin on Qasim. And then Imam and Sheikh Abbas Qummi in Nafasul Mahmoom, he says there came a time when Imam hugged Qasim and they cried for so long that Imam for a moment became unconscious because of crying with Qasim. And then Qasim goes into the battlefield. Umar Asad says to his warrior Arzak-e-Shami, he says to Arzak-e-Shami, Arzak, I want you to go and kill Qasim. This Mal'un laughs at Umar ibn Sa'd, and he says to Umar ibn Sa'd, oh Umar ibn Sa'd, I have 4 boys. My 4 boys are enough for Qasim. Arzak's first son comes out. When Arzak's first son comes out, Abu al-Fadl comes to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, and he says to Abu Abdullah, oh my brother Abu Abdullah, my Qasim has gone to fight, and the first son of Arzak has come. Do dua for him that he is successful. Qasim kills the first son of Arzak. The second son of Arzak comes. Abu al-Fadl goes now to Imam Hussein alayhi salam again. Oh my Aka, please do dua for Qasim, for the second son of Arzak has come. Imam alayhi salam does dua. Qasim kills the second son of Arzak. Now when the third son of Arzak comes, Abu al-Fadl Abbas goes to Abu Abdullah and he says, oh my Aka, my Qasim has not eaten or drank anything for 3 days. How is he going to be able to maintain this fight? But Qasim slaughters the third and the fourth son of Arzak. Arzak, when he sees that all his 4 sons have been killed, now he gets angry and agitated. Now he gets up. Now he wants to come himself and fight Qasim. Now Abu al-Fadl does not go to Imam Hussein to ask Imam Hussein to go to do dua for Qasim. Now Abu al-Fadl goes to Imam Hussein and he says, oh Aka, now Arzak has come. Now give me permission that I go and fight. Now give me permission that I go and fight him. But the historians write that Qasim also kills Arzak. Azadarane Hussein, Qasim ne Arzak ko bhi wasile jahannam kiya. Ibn Saad ke lashkar ne ab Qasim ko ek martaba gher liya. Kisi ne patthar pheke, कीरों की बारिश हुई, किसी ने नकाजी कासिम पे नेज़े का वार किया। आज़ादारो अब कासिम घोड़े से जमीन पे गिरे جب ایک مرتبہ قاسم زمین پہ گرے ہیں، آواز دی چچا جان ادرکنی، میری مدد کو آؤ۔ مورخ لکھتے ہیں کہ جب حسین نے یہ آواز سنی تو تیزی کے ساتھ میدان کی طرف بڑھے، اتنی تیزی کے ساتھ بڑھے کہ فوجوں میں ایک ہلچل مچل گئی۔ شیخ عباس قمی لکھتے ہیں کہ ایک ہلچل مچل گئی فوج میں۔ آزادہ اور حسین تیزی کے ساتھ میدان میں آئے۔ ارباب عزا لکھتے ہیں، ارباب عزا پڑھتے ہیں کہ اس ہلچل میں کچھ گھوڑے مشرق سے مغرب پہ آ گئے، مغرب کے گھوڑے مشرق پہ دوڑ گئے۔ اس درمیان میں قاسم کا لاشا گھوڑوں کی ڈاپوں سے پامال ہو گیا۔ عزادارو، جب امام لاش قاسم پہ آئے ہیں تو قاسم کی لاش پامال ہو گئی ہے۔ امام نے کوئی لاشا سینے سے اٹھا کے امام لائے ہیں، کوئی لاشا کاندھے پہ اٹھا کے لائے ہیں، ششما کی لاش اس امام نے اپنے ہاتھوں پہ اٹھا کے لائے ہیں۔ شیخ عباس قمی نفس المحموم میں لکھتے ہیں کہ قاسم کی لاش بہت مشکل سے امام لے کے آئے، قاسم کا سینہ لیا، امام نے قاسم کے سینے کو اپنے سینے سے لگایا، اب لاش کو گھسیٹ کے خیمے گاہ کی طرف لے کے آئے۔ جب خیمے گاہ میں پہنچے تو ایک مرتبہ قاسم کے لاش کو علی اکبر کے لاش کے قریب رکھ دیا۔ ام فروہ خیمے سے باہر نکلی، ایک مرتبہ فضا سے کہتی ہے، فضا کیا میرا قاسم واپس آیا ہے؟ بس یہ سننا تھا۔ اب عبداللہ نے شاید یہ کہا ہو، اے میری بھابی میں قاسم کا لاش لے کے آیا ہوں لیکن شاید پہچان نہ پاؤ گی۔ ایک مرتبہ ام فروہ قاسم کے لاش پہ گر گئے، وا قاسمہ، وا قاسمہ کی آواز بلند ہوئی۔ ماتم حسین۔
ہو گئے